You wake up every morning to the same mechanical alarm, reach for your phone before your feet touch the ground, and dive headfirst into a flood of notifications that pull you deeper into a world that feels increasingly hollow. You scroll through endless feeds of people performing their perfect lives while something inside you whispers that this cannot be all there is. You sit in meetings that feel meaningless, follow routines that drain your soul, and find yourself staring at the ceiling at night wondering when you stopped feeling truly alive. There is a profound ache in your chest that you cannot name, a hunger that no achievement, no purchase, no distraction can satisfy. You feel like you are sleepwalking through a life that was meant to be so much more. And the worst part is that everyone around you seems perfectly content with this spiritual numbness. The coffee tastes the same every morning, but you cannot remember the last time you truly tasted it. The sun rises and sets, but you barely notice because you are trapped in artificial light, in climate-controlled boxes, moving from one sterile environment to another. You look at your reflection in the bathroom mirror and see a stranger, someone who once had dreams that felt sacred, aspirations that connected you to something infinite, but now you cannot even remember what those dreams were. You drive to work on the same roads, past the same billboards advertising happiness you can purchase, fulfillment you can achieve if you just work harder, consume smarter, optimize better. Your relationships feel increasingly transactional. Conversations revolve around logistics, schedules, complaints about the weather or the traffic or the politics that everyone seems angry about, but no one can really change. Even your most intimate moments feel performed rather than experienced, as if you are all actors who have forgotten that there was ever a reality behind the roles. You attend social gatherings where people talk endlessly, but say nothing that touches the soul, where laughter sounds forced and smiles feel like masks that everyone has agreed to wear. At night, when the world finally quiets down, when the notifications stop buzzing and the demands of productivity release their grip on your consciousness, you lie in bed and feel the full weight of what is missing. It is not just sadness or depression, though those emotions might be present. It is something deeper, more fundamental. It is the recognition that you are living in a world that has systematically eliminated everything that once made existence feel meaningful, connected, and alive. You are not alone in this feeling, and what you are experiencing has a name that reaches back through millennia of human understanding. Mircea Eliade, one of the most profound students of human spirituality who spent his life documenting the sacred traditions of cultures across the globe, recognized that you are living through the greatest tragedy of our time. You are witnessing the systematic disappearance of what he called homo religiosus, the awakened human being who perceives life as sacred, meaningful, and connected to something greater than the material world. In its place, modern society has created what he termed profane man, a being who sees existence as flat, one-dimensional, and stripped of mystery. This is not just a philosophical observation. This is the lived reality of millions of people who feel spiritually suffocated in a world that has forgotten how to recognize the sacred. Through decades of research into the religious experiences of traditional cultures, Eliade discovered that for most of human history, people lived in what he called a cosmos, a meaningful universe where every element had its place, its purpose, its connection to the divine order. Traditional societies understood that they existed within a sacred geography, where certain mountains, rivers, trees, and stones served as bridges between the human world and the realm of the gods. They lived according to sacred calendars that connected their daily activities to cosmic rhythms, seasonal cycles, and mythological time. But modern civilization has performed what Eliade considered a kind of spiritual lobotomy on human consciousness. It has systematically desacralized the world, turning the living cosmos into what it calls the universe, a vast mechanical system governed by impersonal laws and random events. The mountain that once was the dwelling place of gods becomes merely a geological formation to be studied, measured, and possibly exploited for its resources. The forest that once pulsed with spiritual presence becomes a collection of timber assets or a carbon sink. The human being who once stood as a bridge between earth and heaven becomes a biological machine, programmed by evolution to survive and reproduce. Every day, you are surrounded by the evidence of this transformation. You see people who once possessed natural wisdom becoming obsessed with accumulating things that will never fill the void inside them. You watch as ancient traditions that connected communities to deeper meaning get replaced by shopping malls and social media algorithms designed to keep you perpetually unsatisfied. You witness the systematic elimination of mystery, wonder, and reverence from everyday life, replaced by a culture that worships efficiency, productivity, and instant gratification. What Eliade understood is that this is not progress. This is spiritual amnesia on a massive scale. The awakened soul, the one who can still feel the pulse of something sacred in a sunrise, who can sense the profound mystery in a moment of silence, who recognizes that every breath is a miracle, is becoming extinct. Society does not just ignore these souls. It actively celebrates their disappearance. It calls their sensitivity weakness, their wonder naive, their search for meaning impractical. It offers them antidepressants instead of addressing the spiritual starvation that lies at the root of their pain. It tells them to be grateful for lives that feel like elaborate prisons decorated with the illusion of freedom. Watch how our educational systems train children to see the world through purely materialistic lenses. A child who once saw faces in clouds and felt the personality of trees gets taught to categorize weather patterns and identify botanical species. A young person who felt the magic in stories and myths gets redirected toward facts, data, and information that can be measured and tested. The natural capacity for wonder, for sensing the sacred dimension of existence, gets systematically educated out of them until they become efficient producers and consumers who have forgotten that they are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. The medical establishment treats spiritual crisis as chemical imbalance. Someone who feels disconnected from meaning, who experiences what their ancestors would have recognized as a call to deeper spiritual understanding, gets diagnosed with depression, anxiety, or attention disorders. They receive medications designed to help them function better in a society that is fundamentally dysfunctional, rather than receiving support for the spiritual transformation their soul is seeking. The shamanic crisis becomes psychiatric illness. The dark night of the soul becomes clinical depression. The spiritual emergency becomes a medical emergency. Our economic system rewards the destruction of awakened consciousness. We pay the highest salaries to people who can manipulate financial instruments that have no connection to real value, who can design algorithms that exploit human psychological vulnerabilities, who can create marketing campaigns that make people feel inadequate, so they will purchase products they do not need. Meanwhile, we underpay teachers, nurses, artists, and spiritual counselors, the very people whose work supports the development and healing of human consciousness. The entertainment industry floods our attention with content designed to keep us in perpetual distraction, fear, and desire. Instead of stories that elevate consciousness, inspire wisdom, or connect us to deeper truths about human existence, we get endless streams of violence, superficiality, and consumerist fantasy. The mythological narratives that once helped people understand their place in the cosmic order have been replaced by superhero movies that offer escapist thrills, but no real wisdom about how to live a meaningful life. Even our approach to nature reflects this spiritual blindness. We create nature documentaries that present the natural world as a collection of fascinating facts and spectacular visuals, rather than as a living sacred reality of which we are an integral part. We design parks and wilderness areas as recreational spaces for weekend entertainment, rather than as temples for communion with the divine presence that animates all life. We study ecology as a scientific discipline while remaining emotionally and spiritually disconnected from the web of life that sustains our very existence. Eliade saw that Homo religiosus lives in a universe that is alive, breathing, and shot through with meaning. For this awakened being, every place can become sacred space, every moment can become sacred time, and every experience can become a doorway to the divine. They understand what he called hierophany, the breakthrough of the sacred into ordinary reality. They can see the extraordinary hidden within the mundane because they possess what modern society has trained us to forget: the ability to recognize that existence itself is a miracle wrapped in mystery. A hierophany can occur anywhere, at any time, to anyone who maintains the capacity to perceive beyond the veil of profane consciousness. It might happen when you are washing dishes and suddenly feel overwhelmed by gratitude for the simple miracle of water flowing from a faucet, connecting you to the vast hydrological cycle that has sustained life on Earth for billions of years. It might occur when you are holding a newborn baby and feel the presence of something eternal looking back at you through those ancient eyes. It might manifest when you are walking in a cemetery and suddenly understand that death is not an ending, but a transformation, a return to the mystery from which all life emerges. Traditional cultures understood that certain places naturally facilitate hierophanies. Mountains, because they reach toward heaven, serve as axis mundi, the cosmic axis that connects the earth realm to the divine realm. Rivers, because they flow and bring life, become pathways for spiritual purification and renewal, caves, because they penetrate into the darkness of the earth, become wombs of rebirth and initiation. But Eliade recognized that the awakened consciousness can create sacred space anywhere by approaching any location with reverence, attention, and openness to the sacred dimension of reality. Sacred time operates according to completely different principles than the mechanical time that governs modern life. Profane time is linear, quantitative, and irreversible. It moves from past through present toward future in a straight line that leads ultimately to death and meaninglessness. But sacred time is cyclical, qualitative, and eternally renewable. It is the time of myth, ritual, and spiritual experience, where the eternal truths that give meaning to human existence can be accessed and lived. In sacred time, you can participate in the eternal present moment where creation is always happening, where the divine is always available, where transformation is always possible. This is why traditional cultures celebrated seasonal festivals that reenacted the cosmic creation, practiced rituals that connected them to ancestral wisdom, and told stories that transported them beyond the limitations of ordinary historical time into the realm of eternal truth. But profane man, the product of our supposedly enlightened age, lives in a dead universe of objects to be manipulated, problems to be solved, and resources to be consumed. For them, a tree is lumber, a mountain is minerals, a river is a transportation route, and a human being is a unit of economic productivity. They have been trained to see the world, as Carl Jung warned, as nothing but a problem to be solved rather than a mystery to be lived. They mistake information for wisdom, data for understanding, and achievement for fulfillment. The profane consciousness cannot access sacred time because it is trapped in what Eliade called the terror of history, the nightmare of linear time that offers no possibility of renewal, redemption, or transcendence. Every moment becomes a step closer to death. Every experience becomes a resource to be consumed. Every relationship becomes a transaction to be optimized. There is no escape from the grinding machinery of chronological time, no access to the eternal dimension where meaning and purpose can be discovered. Modern architecture reflects this spiritual poverty. We build structures that are functional but soulless, efficient but sterile, impressive but cold. We create living spaces that disconnect us from natural rhythms, work environments that isolate us from community, and public spaces that encourage consumption rather than contemplation. Compare this to the sacred architecture of traditional cultures, where every building was designed to facilitate connection between human consciousness and divine presence, where proportion, orientation, and decoration all serve to elevate awareness and inspire reverence. You know what touches me most when I read your messages? It is realizing that we are not alone in this search. If you are listening to me now and feel that emptiness, that sensation that something important is missing in your life, I want you to know that I understand exactly what you are going through. There were moments when I also felt completely disconnected from the sacred, lost in the midst of a routine that seemed to suck all the magic out of existence. That is why I want to ask you a very direct question. What was the last moment you felt there was something greater than yourself present in your life? It could have been contemplating a sunset, listening to music, or simply in an instant of silence. If you feel comfortable, write in the comments, "I miss the sacred in my daily life," and briefly tell when that last moment was. Your story might be exactly what someone needs to read today to feel less alone in this journey. And I promise I will read each comment with the care it deserves. The tragedy that Eliade identified runs deeper than personal unhappiness. Entire cultures are forgetting how to access what he called sacred time, those eternal moments that exist outside the grinding machinery of chronological time. Sacred time is when you lose yourself completely in an experience and emerge feeling renewed, connected, and whole. It is the time of deep prayer, profound love, artistic creation, or spiritual communion with nature. But modern life has become a prison of profane time, endless sequences of mechanical moments measured by clocks and calendars, where every second must be productive and every experience must be optimized. Think about how different your ancestors' relationship to time was from your own. They lived according to natural rhythms, seasonal cycles, and sacred calendars that connected their daily activities to cosmic patterns. They understood that certain times were more auspicious for planting, harvesting, celebrating, mourning, beginning new ventures, or engaging in spiritual practices. They knew that time itself was alive, that different moments carried different qualities of energy and possibility. Their year was punctuated by festivals and rituals that transported them out of ordinary historical time into what Eliade called the eternal return, a cyclical participation in the cosmic creation that renewed both individual consciousness and community bonds. During these sacred celebrations, they did not just remember the mythological events that gave meaning to their existence. They participated in those events, becoming contemporaries of the gods and heroes whose actions established the cosmic order. But you live in a flattened timeline where every moment is supposedly equivalent to every other moment, where time is just an empty container to be filled with activities and experiences. You have lost access to the qualitative dimension of time, the understanding that certain moments are pregnant with possibility while others are barren, that sometimes call for action while others demand contemplation, that the rhythm of your life should flow in harmony with larger cycles rather than being driven by the artificial urgency of economic productivity. Sacred space has suffered the same fate. Eliade understood that awakened humans create sacred space wherever they recognize the presence of the divine. This is not just about temples or churches. Sacred space can emerge in a garden where you feel connected to the cycle of life, in a room where you meditate and find peace, or even in the corner of your kitchen where you prepare food with love and gratitude. But our culture has systematically eliminated sacred space, replacing it with shopping centers, office cubicles, and entertainment complexes designed to stimulate consumption rather than contemplation. Traditional cultures knew how to consecrate space, how to transform any location into a sacred center through ritual, intention, and reverence. They understood that the way you approach a place determines what you will encounter there. Enter a forest as a resource to be exploited, and you will see timber and wildlife management opportunities. Enter the same forest as a sacred grove, and you will encounter the living spirit of the place, the genius loci that traditional peoples always honored before taking any action in a new location. Your home could become a sacred space if you learn to approach it as homo religiosus rather than as a consumer of real estate. Every room could serve as a temple for different aspects of your spiritual development. Your kitchen could become an altar for nourishing yourself and others with intention and gratitude. Your bedroom could become a sanctuary for rest, intimacy, and dreams. Your living room could become a space for community, conversation, and the sharing of stories that connect you to deeper truths about human existence. Instead, most modern homes are designed and used as storage facilities for possessions, entertainment centers for distraction, and showpieces for social status. They are filled with objects but empty of presence, efficient but soulless, impressive but cold. They reflect the consciousness of profane man, who sees his environment as a collection of things to be arranged and rearranged, rather than as a living space to be consecrated and inhabited with awareness. The most heartbreaking aspect of this transformation is how society rewards the extinction of the awakened soul. We give awards to people who can efficiently strip mine mountains, while ignoring those who can feel the mountain's ancient wisdom. We celebrate entrepreneurs who can turn human attention into profit, while marginalizing poets who can transform human suffering into beauty. We worship technologies that connect us to information, while destroying our connection to each other and to the natural world that sustains us. Eliade recognized that this is not the natural evolution of human consciousness. This is a profound forgetting, a collective amnesia about who we really are and what life is truly for. The awakened soul knows intuitively that we are not biological machines programmed to consume and compete. We are conscious beings capable of experiencing wonder, transcendence, and profound connection to the mystery that created and sustains everything. If you have made it this far in your life still able to feel that there is something missing, still capable of sensing that existence should feel more meaningful than it does, still able to recognize that the voice inside you, crying out for something deeper, is not mental illness but spiritual health, then you are carrying the flame of homo religiosus. You are one of the remaining awakened souls in a culture that is celebrating its own spiritual suicide. The path back to awakening is not about rejecting all aspects of modern life or retreating to some imagined golden age. Eliade understood that the sacred can manifest anywhere, even in the heart of our technological civilization. The key is developing what he called the religious mode of being, the capacity to perceive the sacred dimensions of reality that remain hidden from profane consciousness. This transformation begins with what Eliade called the religious experience of space. You must learn to see your environment not as a collection of neutral objects but as a living field of possibilities for sacred encounter. The tree outside your window is not just a biological organism producing oxygen. It is a manifestation of the cosmic life force, a teacher of patience and seasonal wisdom, a bridge between earth and sky. The storm clouds gathering overhead are not just meteorological phenomena to be predicted and endured. They are expressions of cosmic power, reminders of forces greater than human control, invitations to humility and awe. This means learning to recognize hierophanies, those moments when something eternal breaks through into your ordinary experience. These breakthroughs of the sacred happen constantly, but profane consciousness has been trained to ignore them or explain them away. The feeling of overwhelming love when you look at a sleeping child, the sense of infinite peace when you watch a sunset, the sudden understanding that emerges during deep conversation with a friend, the creative inspiration that seems to come from beyond your personal mind. All of these are hierophanies, manifestations of the sacred trying to awaken you to the deeper reality that underlies ordinary experience. Cultivating sacred time requires rebellion against the tyranny of mechanical scheduling. You must create spaces in your life for what the mystics call kairos, the eternal moment that exists outside chronological sequence. This might mean setting aside time each day for contemplation, meditation, or prayer, not as another task to be completed, but as an opening into the timeless dimension of your being. It might mean observing the natural rhythms of your body and energy, rather than forcing yourself to conform to arbitrary schedules imposed by social expectation. It means establishing sacred space in your life, where you can remember who you are, beneath all the roles and expectations that society has layered upon you. This space might be a corner of your room arranged for quiet reflection, a garden where you tend plants with attention and care, or simply a walking path where you regularly commune with nature. The important thing is not the external form, but the intention you bring to the space, your willingness to encounter it as holy ground rather than mere geography. Most importantly, it means recovering your connection to what Eliade called the mythological consciousness, the ability to understand your personal story as part of a larger cosmic narrative. Traditional peoples lived within mythologies that gave meaning to their struggles, purpose to their actions, and hope for their future. They understood that their individual lives participated in eternal patterns, that their personal challenges were versions of the universal human journey from ignorance to wisdom, from separation to union, from death to rebirth. Modern people have been taught to see their lives as random sequences of events with no deeper significance, as biological accidents in a meaningless universe. But the awakened soul recognizes that every life is a sacred story, a unique expression of the divine creativity exploring itself through individual experience. Your struggles are not punishments or mistakes. They are initiations, opportunities for growth and transformation. Your relationships are not just social arrangements. They are sacred encounters, chances to learn love, compassion, and understanding. Your work, whatever it might be, can become a spiritual practice if you approach it with the right consciousness. Whether you are teaching children, serving food, building houses, or analyzing data, you can transform any activity into an offering, a way of serving the larger web of life of which you are an integral part. The key is bringing intention, attention, and reverence to whatever you are doing, recognizing that all honest work contributes to the cosmic order when performed with awareness and love. Remember that your ancestors, for thousands of generations, lived in a world that pulsed with meaning, where every meal was a communion, every gathering was a ceremony, and every season brought its own wisdom. That heritage lives in your DNA, in the deepest layers of your consciousness, waiting to be awakened. The spiritual hunger you feel is not a personal failing. It is the voice of your authentic self calling you back to your true nature. This ancestral wisdom is not lost. It lives in the indigenous cultures that still maintain their connections to the sacred. It survives in the contemplative traditions that have preserved techniques for accessing divine consciousness. It emerges spontaneously in artists, musicians, and poets who channel inspiration from beyond the personal mind. It appears in the work of healers who understand that true healing involves the restoration of spiritual wholeness, rather than just the treatment of physical symptoms. The world needs awakened souls now more than ever. It needs people who can see through the illusion that material success equals spiritual fulfillment. It needs beings who can feel the pain of a planet being treated as a warehouse of resources rather than a living sanctuary. It needs consciousness that can recognize the sacred in a crying child, an aging parent, a homeless person, or a struggling friend, rather than seeing them as problems to be solved or ignored. The environmental crisis, the mental health epidemic, the breakdown of community bonds, the rise of meaninglessness and despair among young people, all of these are symptoms of the same spiritual disease that Eliade identified decades ago. We are trying to live as profane beings in a sacred universe, and the mismatch is killing us individually and collectively. The solutions will not come from more technology, more consumption, or more control over natural processes. They will come from the recovery of homo religiosus, the awakening of human consciousness to its sacred nature and cosmic responsibility. Every awakened soul becomes a seed of transformation in the collective consciousness. When you remember how to see the sacred in ordinary experience, you help others remember. When you create sacred space in your life, you demonstrate that alternatives to profane existence are possible. When you live according to sacred time rather than mechanical time, you offer a different model of what human life can be. Most importantly, you become a guardian of the sacred dimension of reality that our culture is trying so desperately to eliminate. You prove that the human heart cannot be satisfied with material prosperity alone, that the human soul requires meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than individual survival. You demonstrate that we are not biological machines programmed by evolution to consume and compete, but conscious beings capable of love, wisdom, and communion with the divine mystery that creates and sustains all existence. This is not about becoming perfect or achieving some elevated spiritual status. It is about remembering what you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning that profane culture has imposed upon your natural awareness. You were born as homo religiosus. Every child enters this world with the capacity for wonder, for seeing the sacred in simple experiences, for loving without conditions. The work is not to become someone different, but to remember who you really are. The disappearance of awakened souls is not inevitable. Every time you choose wonder over cynicism, every time you create a moment of sacred time in your busy schedule, every time you recognize the divine spark in another human being, you are participating in the resurrection of homo religiosus. You are proving that the sacred cannot be eliminated from human experience because it is not separate from who you are. It is who you are. The world may celebrate the extinction of the awakened soul, but the awakened soul knows something the world has forgotten. You are not here to be a cog in someone else's machine. You are here to be a unique expression of the mystery that creates and sustains all life. You are here to remember what society has forgotten, that every breath is sacred, every heartbeat is a prayer, and every moment is an opportunity to touch the eternal. Wake up, stay awake. The world needs your awakened soul more than it knows, and your soul needs this awakening more than you can imagine.